It is 12:05 p.m. and we are convening the meeting for the Vermont Community Broadband Board of March 11th, 2024. We have board members in attendance. We have Dan, Brian, Holly, and myself. Laura is expected to be in and out of the meeting as she is traveling, but we will convene the meeting with the 4 of us present at this time. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda and approve. Before I do that, let's do staff roll call. Sorry about that, Christine.
Yep, that's okay. We've got Rob Fish, Aaron Herzog, Alexi Montserrat, Brittany, Brittany Watson, Lucy Fortier, Tony Clitheroe, and also I also want to introduce Christina Sweet in a moment. She's our new broadband grants administrator. But we also have Tom Malinowski, who's the budget person from the PSD, as well as Gwen Sackhoff here who's watching our legislature. But if you take a moment, Christina, I'd love to introduce you. Christina's the Director of Risk Management and Regulatory Compliance.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Today is my first day with Public Service Department, Vermont Community Broadband Board, and I am excited to be taking on this role of managing grants and working on regulatory compliance and risk management. I spent the last 9 years at the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, where I managed a lot of federal and state-funded grants. So I'm really excited to bring that experience to the mission of VCBB and continuing to work for the state of Vermont.
Excellent. Welcome aboard, Christina. Sounds like a great background, and hopefully you have fun in this new capacity, your new role. All right, first item on the agenda first item up for approval is the agenda. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second, need discussion.
Yep. So seconds on the table. Discussion. Go ahead, Dan.
Did I missed some input on the item number 4? I'd like to pull it and add it into next month. And I see Holly has a hand up.
Okay. What I'd like to propose that we do is leave the board policies on just as a quick check-in, so we can just really quickly go through where it's at, because I want to do an update on the consumer protection standard as well. But let's amend it so that we're not taking specific action on the construction standards policy. Perfect. Okay. Holly, does that address your concern, or?
Yes, I would like Tony to talk to us about process and some of the changes or scheduling that she's doing.
Okay,
absolutely.
Great.
Happy to do it.
All right, so we're going to leave 4 on as board policy update, just a discussion and update. I'd also like to, item number 9, EC fiber resolution, that has been pulled from the agenda, so we're going to remove that. And also, I would like to add, since we likely will have a little bit of time, I would like to go back and add an executive session item at the end after 13 for board evaluation and personnel matters. I dropped off the last meeting, and I'd like to catch up with the board. I know it might be a little redundant, but I would like to circle back around to that item and have some dialogue with board members. So we'll add that toward the end, 13.1. All right, with those changes to the agenda, is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the agenda as modified, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Christine?
Yep, if it was time for public to make comment, anybody makes a comment, please raise your hand, and you'll have 3 minutes. And we'll start with Irv Tomei.
Thank you. As from this perspective of a former chair of EC Fiber, I wanted to make a comment about a concern which I wouldn't call mission creep, but policy creep. There are differences between the board's mission as spelled out in Act 71 and the requirements of the BEAD program. Now, one of the most obvious has been thrown into even a greater highlight by the cessation of federal funding for affordable connections. And that is the board is already grappling with the seemingly intractable problem of how to fund access for people who are economically disadvantaged without putting a crushing burden on many, if not all, CUDs. But I'd like to point to something else. BEAD requires service to 100% of inhabited locations, whether or not they're on the grid. The definitions in Act 71 don't do that. A location, as defined in Act 71 or Chapter 91 of Title 30, a location is a place that is on the grid. Now, this may seem like a trivial distinction, and many of us tend to assume that off-grid locations are probably hunting camps, or in some cases, pretty rundown dwellings inhabited by folks who are really scraping the bottom. But actually, there are other off-grid locations, which are pretty expensive locations with generators. And you could be an out-of-state or in-state person of considerable wealth who has chosen to have a woodland retreat several miles off the grid. Now, if you were to extend BEAD's requirements to all of your grant recipients, regardless of funding source, you might be forcing CUDs to run several miles of fiber optic cable to a generator-fueled luxury location. And I think that would be a tragic misuse of public funds and scarce funds. So I wanted to call attention to that. It's an example of the care that's needed, that the requirements you need to impose on BEAD subgrant recipients not become the board's policies across the board for all grants that it administers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have, Ellie.
Hi there. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that Maple Broadband, in the last month since the last board meeting, we substantially completed the phase 1 of our build. So we now have 100, I know, right? We started in October 2022, and with the exception of a couple areas, there's one area we're waiting on a private easement, and then there's 2 areas we're waiting on GMP to do a little bit of work. But everything else is done. So we have 143.5 miles of active service, and we are well underway with phase 2. And we'll be making public announcements about the launch of that phase shortly. So I just wanted to bring some good news to the start of this meeting. Thank you.
That is awesome news. Thank you for sharing. Congratulations.
Thanks, Ellie. Krista, shoot.
Hi, I'm just want to follow up on one of the things that Irv said and make you aware of something that NEK Broadband is doing today, actually. Well, tried to do over the weekend, but the FCC process can be a stickler sometimes. But we are submitting a fabric challenge for 756 of our almost 1,400 off-grid addresses. These are addresses that have been confirmed to not have power and to not have habitable structures And we've also identified 215 addresses in the CV fiber territory. So that's going to be inside of the June issuance of the map. And then whatever they don't approve on this round, because they either want more evidence or whatnot, the FCC indicated that they would meet with us after June and would identify the evidence that we would need to bring to the table. So we do, as the CUD with probably the most off-grid addresses, feel like it's pretty important to identify those that are actually homes. So we've been using, the town clerks all did evaluations, used their local knowledge, and provided information from the tax papers regarding whether or not it was a residential location, and the grand listing, which takes into account not whether or not somebody is actually residing there, but whether or not the primary purpose of the building could be considered residential based on the services that it has. So that's just an update on that piece. You know, we have to get to those unserved addresses, not necessarily to the underserved. And the last item is to let you know that we did submit a Community Connect, USDA Community Connect grant that was for nearly $3 million. We'll know sometime in the next 5 months, I guess. I'm not really sure what time frame they're going to be reviewing those on. And we are attempting to go after a loan from USDA under Reconnect 5. So we're putting a lot of work in to try and bring as much funding in to the state as we can, and just want people to remember that right now we've based our, you know, the last ARPA round was based on unserved miles, and that doesn't necessarily take into consideration, you know, what the number of premises along those miles are. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And we are, just to let you know, Krista and the rest of people on this call, that our version 1 of the BEAD plan was accepted, which triggers the start of the challenge process. And that challenge process will start on the 18th. And that's, of course, related to your 700 plus submissions. Lisa, go ahead.
Christine,
Yeah,
before we move off of Krista, how much was the Community Connect grant submittal for? What was the dollar number?
It was nearly 3 million. I think it was 2,970,000, something like that.
Okay.
I can get you an exact number.
No, just taking notes. Holly has her hand up.
You're muted.
First of all, clever using the town clerks in this very effective way. It pays to be a municipally oriented organization to do things like that. Good for you.
We got almost 45 out of our 51 clerks responded. So I think that's a pretty impressive return.
Blow me away. So the question I have is, I don't think we have a dashboard where we see the total cumulative grant amounts for each CUD that aren't necessarily VCBB grants. Is there someplace, Christine, where we can see that? And Krista, do you know what your total leverage funds are at this point? You know, total grant monies brought in?
Well, we're near 100 million if it's all combined in. But it's to say, in regards to monies that aren't coming through the VCBB, then our number is probably about 20. It's a little over 25 million in financing and grant, plus the 3 that we just applied for, and roughly 7 to 9 that we're applying for later this month.
Thank you.
Yeah. In response to your question about the total grants that each CUD is required, including that outside of the VCBB, the logical, we don't have that currently, but the logical place where that would be on our dashboard. I will consult with staff and then, see.
And if I
Make that
might
happen.
just say to that point, it might be good to have a grant metric and a financing metric, and then, that would indicate the financing inputs that EC Fiber has made and the grant inputs and financing inputs that we've made. And then one other distinction is the town ARPA money, because it's not really VCBB money, so it's probably its own thing, but I don't know if maybe it's its own thing or it's part of the other grants, whatever. I don't, but thanks.
Yep, thank you. Lisa, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, speaking of funding, I just wanted to make a brief public comment that in response to the agenda change, Lamoille FiberNet's just one of several CUDs who's interested in securing whatever funding is available, whether it's state, federal, etc. And so I just wanted to comment that we support the staff's efforts to continue to develop options and proposals on using any remaining funds that the VCBB may control. So, and that such awards can be available to all applicants. So we're looking forward to that progress. So thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Anyone else like to make comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. Back to you, Patty.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes, and I do have some changes to the minutes, but let's first tee it up as a motion. I'm gonna abstain from the February 6th motion to approve because I was not in attendance for the special meeting.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Holly. Is there a second? Dan or Brian? All right, Dan's second. Discussion. I'd like to ask for the minutes to be amended to indicate that this was a special meeting of the Vermont Community Broadband Board. That's one. Two is to note that I'm to list in the roll call that Patty Richards is absent. And then at the bottom of the minutes, it says Patty made a motion to adjourn. That wasn't me. So if that can be corrected. That's all I had for changes. Are there any other items for the minutes?
For just the 6th, right?
Just 6th. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to abstain, just to give you a forewarning. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we have 3 ayes, and that's Holly, Dan, and Brian, and Patty Richards is an abstention. Are there any nays? Hearing no nays, the motion carries with 1 abstention. And Christine, if you can just follow up on those meeting minute changes, that'd be awesome.
Yep. We will, duly noted.
Thank you. The next meeting minutes is February 12th, 24. I'll make a motion to approve these minutes. I do have some changes to this as well. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Holly. Discussion.
I have a change. Go
Okay,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead, Holly.
Well, mine's down at Roman numeral 6. Where do you start?
Very top of the page, meeting started at 12:24, should be 12:03. That's what the recording said. And then I have on Roman numeral 4, it shows that the board took action with a motion and a second, but it doesn't record that there was a vote. And I've noted in the minutes, there's a couple of places that we're not recording the votes. And that should be part of the record that we actually voted on it. So Christine, if you can have the minutes scrubbed for those issues, that would be great. but specifically on item 4, there should be a vote after this.
Okay,
Okay, Holly, you're on 6.
Yeah, at Roman numeral 6, we talk about the KPI definitions. And I'd like to ask Tony to take a look at the language as is stated in the minutes, because I'm not going to be able to make recommendations of how to change it. But the lit definition, the bottom line is the definition stated here should be really clear, because we want this record to be clear, open, and accessible to the participants as well as to the board. Lit seems pretty clear to me. Construction is not clear at all to me. And I think we should just take that section under advisement to have Tony come back to us with a definition that actually matches what the policy is supposed to be.
Will do, Holly.
Okay, with that significant of a change on item 6, I'd like to ask that we not take action on the minutes, so we bring this back for consideration at our next meeting.
Do you want to move that, or do we just acquiesce?
Well, I'm bad at Robert's Rules of Order. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Should we
I'm
vote
gonna-
it down?
Yeah, let's vote it down. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the February 12th minutes of the discussion, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right, the minutes are not approved, and we'll take those back and scrub those for item 6, and also address the changes noted that I noted. All right, that is board meeting minutes for item 3. Is there anything else on meeting minutes to discuss? All right, hearing nothing, let's move on to item 4, which is now policy, board policy update. Let's trigger it like that. Do we want to
Thank
talk
you,
about? Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, so we would like to take the opportunity to provide an update to the board in terms of where the accountability policies are, and also make a recommended minor change, a tweak essentially to the board approval policy that was adopted by the board in the December 11th meeting. So I'll just start at the top. We have 3 policies that have been through public comment and post public comment in-depth subsequent meetings with the subgroup to make edited changes. And so those 3 policies are pretty close to final. We are going to post them again for public comment, give it another 5 days, and see what we get. But I'm pretty confident that those 3 policies, being the construction standards policy, the consumer protection policy, and the grantee agreement policy, will be ready for the next board meeting. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get through all 3 of them at the board meeting, but I think we may, because they have been so thoroughly vetted that I believe they're in good shape. So that's where we are with those 3. In the hopper.
Wait. So you've named a process change here. Are we going to separately address that?
I was going to address that later, but this is fine. This is fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted, so those 3 are the ones that you can expect at the next meeting. And then shortly thereafter, we will have a draft of the accountability policy for your review, but that is going to go through another set of subgroup meetings, and depending on what happens with that, it's either going to get posted for public comment again, or not. But in any event, that policy is in excellent shape. I think it's very close to final. And I am going to be proposing that policy gets viewed on its own as an agenda item for the board meeting. I don't know if it'll be the beginning of April, but I think that's one of the things that we're going to be discussing.
Tony, did you said the accountability policy? Did you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's both. It's an accountability policy, but you're right. It's the affordability policy. My apologies. So in any event, then aside from that, there's also an annual report policy that's very comprehensive, and it's also going to require a separate meeting, and it's also in excellent shape. And the other two policies, I'm going to recommend that we put off for just a little bit. One was for the sunset provisions for the VCBB, and as I think some of you know, Representative Sibilia has drafted legislation and introduced legislation that includes, that addresses the whole sunsetting of the VCBB. That has not been taken off the wall this year. However, we are in 2024. We still have a few more years to deal with this. So I don't think it needs to be a priority for this year. And we should keep an eye out on the legislation because that may make it unnecessary. And then the other thing with respect to the lien committee is there were significant comments that were received by the NTIA in response to a request for comment that they issued this past summer. And the NTIA did recently issue a new policy notice with respect to all the federal interest period and the uniform guidance and all of that. And so we're going to have subsequent subgroup meetings to discuss how the lien committee wants to proceed because there are enhanced federal interest period requirements under BEAD and accountability measures that we need to look at. We need to reassess where we're going forward with the lien committee as a result of that. So,
and Tony, just one of the things to note as the person who's working on the lien committee is that the lien committee was changing its name to not the lien committee.
Yes, that's true. We're going to call ourselves something else. We just haven't figured it out yet, but to address the federal interest and ongoing accountability concerns, post-construction concerns. So that's what I have for an update on the policy. So before I go to the minor tweak that I think we need to make to the process, I wanted to find out if anyone had any questions that I could answer.
Yeah, quickly, Tony, just administrative process-wise, you're going to post the construction standard, consumer protection, and the grant agreement policies up for public, essentially public comment. Is that accurate?
Correct. For a 5-day period. Yes.
Okay. Do you also directly send those to all board members and subgroup members so they get it in their email? Because if you are not finding that subfolder, you're just not finding that policy, just so there's no confusion, I'd love to have it blast in my email. Here's the draft to look at to make sure I've got the right one.
Happy to do that. It's a great idea. We'll do.
Thank you very much. And one other question, and this may be somewhat of a loaded question, but as we're talking through the significant comments from the NTIA on the lien committee, refresh my memory on how do our policies fit or not fit with the next step with a BEAD grant? Do the policies we're writing today, do they apply to grants issued through BEAD?
They only apply, well, I don't know. I saw Holly's hand, so.
You go ahead, Tony.
Okay, so as far as BEAD is concerned, BEAD and Act 71 are fundamentally in sync, right? Both pieces of legislation seek to get broadband access, affordable broadband access out to everyone. So I'm just saying that from the get-go because, you know, there is that fundamental joinder in terms of goals. Obviously, they're different policy requirements, they're different grant requirements. The board has adopted separate BEAD grant requirements, and so we've made it very clear in the policies that the policies only apply to the extent they're consistent with BEAD. So anything like Mr. Tomei mentioned earlier, the difference between locations and things like that, how locations are defined under Act 71 and the BEAD program. The BEAD program is an entirely separate program. And so there are going to be parts of the policies that are, generally concern universal service and generally concern, broadband. But they're not going to apply to BEAD unless it's consistent with BEAD. If there's anything inconsistent, it does not apply.
Okay, that is going to be quite a dance to maneuver. Just going to make that statement.
I think, Patty, we did discuss this at the outset, and it has taken us so long to get through the Act 71 set of policies. What we had talked about doing is doing Act 71 policies and then noting changes necessary for BEAD. And so we had we have something that's not a moving target. And then we moved on to clarify how that works for BEAD. That was the plan.
Okay. That's very helpful, Holly. What I'm going to ask is that we put on either the next agenda, probably the next agenda, if we can fit this on, is to do a BEAD overview. I'm going to say, from my standpoint, I'm not a BEAD expert. I've not been able to read every page of BEAD and really, digest and really understand it. Nor do I think that as a board member, I should be in the weeds on that. And what I'd like to do is get a better understanding of who on staff is our lead BEAD contact, like who's carrying the water on this in terms of the details, the meat and potatoes, and then having some of that discussion relative to how our policies fit or need to be modified for BEAD and sort through some of that, like put that as an active item. Holly's shaking her head no.
Patty, with all due respect, I think it'd be really great if we got through these policies once and then we came back and did that, because I think what we're doing is stopping midstream.
Yep.
And evaluating policies that aren't done yet. Yeah.
I agree. I don't want to hold up the policies, but I do want to get a better handle on some of the details of BEAD. And I'm going to say freely that I don't personally feel like I have a real detailed understanding of BEAD, and nor do I want to understand all the nuances. That's not my role. But I would like to understand who on staff is that role. And if we don't have that person on staff, do we bring in outside help for that? It's too important of initiative to get it wrong, is my thinking. And I just don't have a sense. We don't have to answer this right now, Christine, but I just plant the seed of thinking about it, of, kind of thinking through, do we need outside help and expertise as we navigate the waters? What is potentially Clay Purvis's role in this to help us through? And can we tap him to, be available for us as we're navigating the grants and we move forward with BEAD?
Can I add a comment, Patty?
Of course.
I like the idea that you are seeking out this distinction between the two programs. Should make Irv Tomei feel better too. And the idea, I think, is right-minded, but staff has to know already today what the distinctions are because they're starting to work in BEAD. So maybe Christine can identify for each person in their respective role who can talk to the distinctions between BEAD and Act 71.
Yeah, I get the intent. So I think, rather than answer any questions here. What we'll do is we'll put together a presentation package with those details and information for you.
Okay, that would be really helpful, Christine, just so that we get a better grounding of, you know, the experts in hand and on staff and how we're navigating this forward.
Okay,
Okay.
duly
All right.
noted.
Okay, so then the other thing with respect to the policies is I was hoping we could make a minor revision to the process approval by adding the second public comment, which is kind of organically where we ended up with these other policies that are going to be introduced at the next meeting. So I just wanted to raise that and see what the board thinks, and whether or not it's something that you also want to have noticed for public comment, or whether it's something we can do and have the board approve today. It's just a minor tweak, adding a second set of public posting.
I have comments, Patty, when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So my understanding, and I have it written down here in some big bold letters, is that it goes from a working committee to staff. Staff reviews it. It goes to public comment. And then staff refers a version to the board. What I understand is actually happening is that staff is negotiating with CUDs. And now there would be another public comment period. And then it would get referred to the board. I don't know if we could have made this any harder, but the fact is that when we start with the committee work, that is also essentially a negotiation process in which a board member or staff has drafted a version that is a best recommendation from that public, I'm going to call it a public, even though it isn't totally public, from a public process. So I count that as 3 bites at the apple, 3 for CUDs. I also want to be clear that I don't believe that this is a process of building consensus about what our regulatory or our review rules should be. This is not about consensus building. This is about being clear on what our guidelines are and what our points of measurement are vis-a-vis the statute. Yes, we're interested in what CUDs have to say, absolutely. And where we're making life impossible or just plain hard, we want to know that for sure. But I don't think we should be negotiating until we get everybody in agreement. I'm really opposed to that, because sometimes board members have to make decisions that aren't a happy result for CUDs. The third thing is, whatever we do, I think we ought to start with whatever version was handed off to staff and have a red line available to where we end up in our proposal to the board, so that we can, to your point about, trying to find the final version and so on. I'm not interested in only the final version. I'm interested in what was already considered and changed. Thanks.
Got it.
Holly, I think that's a great point. But I will say there may be some policies that can use an extra check-in with a subgroup just to get some minor things minor things reviewed and move things along smoothly. I'm not saying that has to be a requirement for every subgroup, but there may be situations like in the consumer protection standard group, there are a few tweaks that I wanted to run by the subgroup again. And it was worthwhile to do that. I'm not negotiating, but it was worthwhile to do it. I think we have a policy that sets out the minimum requirements. If any subgroup wants to go above and beyond, I don't see any harm in that.
Yeah, I think that's your prerogative. But I don't see it as a process, as an addition to the process.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, well, that's fine if it can just be an optional thing. I just thought it might be clearer to have it all written down, but understood.
I'm hearing that as a committee chair asking for another round of input, which is different than posting for public comment, actually.
So, but are you objecting to another posting? The second posting, Holly?
Well, I don't, you know, what I'm trying to grapple with is how long this process takes, but also if it was publicly posted and then there was a convening based on that input, why is that not enough? There will be public comment during the board meeting if the proposed rule is really off. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was never a member of the Quaker Church, but I feel like that's what we're doing here.
Okay, well, if
So I don't know what the other board members feel like. Should it, if it has it changed so materially that that the committee chairs are saying a public another another public posting for public comment is necessary because it has changed so much from the first time it was posted? Is that what
I
is
think
happening?
so, I think so.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing.
Holly, I'll give you, I mean, in mine, we had a near final version, got comments, tweaked it, thought we were good. Then the thing that got posted somehow got legalese up and people didn't recognize it. And so we got a lot of comments back on that what happened, I thought we were good and now we have changes. And so we've done a rescrub and tried to go back to where we originally were, where everybody was generally good. And we just want to have, we want to send that out to the work group one more time to show that we were responsive to their feedback, and then we got to post it publicly, and then hopefully we're done.
So your comment is after it goes back to the work group, it should be publicly posted.
I'm assuming that's the process. I don't, if that was an assumption on my part that it had to be publicly posted after that, because we did do another round of revisions, even though they were revisions back to the original. But if it doesn't need to be posted for public comment again, that's news to me, and I'm happy with that. I just want to get this done. These things are so long overdue. It's crazy.
But you could see the cyclical nature of
Oh, sure.
I think everybody's at the point it's just left for final viewing. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Good point. Good way to put it, Dan. Yep.
It will be public when it comes to the board.
Agreed. But I think the three policies that are coming to the next board member meeting, or the next board meeting, are in exactly what Brian's discussion laid out. That's the same thing for the consumer protection.
So does that mean that you don't need to public posting for 5 days? It can just come to the board meeting and there's an opportunity for public comment.
I want to go.
Where did you hear, Brian?
Yeah, I want to go above and beyond and repost it for public comment just to make sure. And then it's going to come to the board meeting after that.
All right. And I note that Laura Sibilia showed up with a hand raised on my screen.
Oh, she did. Laura, are you there?
Yes, apologies. I'm in the air. Yes, can you hear me? Apologize. I'm in the airport. And have been listening to most of this conversation. I don't have too much to add except for one just perspective on accountability and overall comment for us to keep in mind. Again, as you heard me say, broken record, Act 71 was about two things: universality and accountability. The universality was within a CUD. The accountability was a CUD. Accountability meant someone that we could hold accountable for ensuring proper maintenance, proper investment, management of rates, connection to the community. And I do worry just a bit that when we talk about accountability, we are focusing only on holding CUD's accountability for investment, which of course we must do, and others. But I'm worried that that initial shift around accountability, which meant a focus on community-based organizations to ensure connection to the community and repairs and investment, that we have not kind of kept the bead on that, so to speak. Sorry, poor choice of words. So don't have much to, it's not really a question. It's a request, a comment, and listening. And hopefully things will quiet down at this gate shortly.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, anything else relative to board policies? Okay, let's move on now to item 5B, the potential subrecipient support program.
Well,
Yep, and
Patty, we didn't actually amend the policy to require additional public meetings after committee revisions. Did you want to do that, or okay?
Yeah.
It's
I think
circumstantial. Okay.
Exactly. I think the board members can choose to go above and beyond, and some of us are doing that. But I would not amend the policy. I would make it a requirement.
Got
Okay.
it. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Holly.
okay, at this point, I'll turn it over to Rob Fish to talk about the 2 applications for the BEAD subrecipient support program.
Thank you, Christine. Good afternoon, board members. Once again, we're bringing forth several proposals for the BEAD Potential Subrecipient Support Program. As background, this is a $1 million program that is open to any type of providers. It's competitive. It's based on scores. We received 3 applications between the last board meeting and this one. We are recommending funding for 2 of those at this point. One from Northwest Fiberworks for $150,000 and another from Lamoille FiberNet for $55,570. A third proposal we will expect to bring at the next board meeting. I can give you the totals that would be remaining. It's with these, if these the board does choose to approve these, we would have 651,170 approved for grants and another 150,000 application pending. So members from those 2 CUDs that applied, again, this is open to not just CUDs, but other small providers. If you have any questions, members of those CUDs are present. I can also say a little bit about the proposals if you'd like.
Yeah, Rob, it might be helpful if you can tee each one up and just give an
Sure.
overview. And if any of the board members would like to talk in more detail, then we can dive in.
Certainly. I'll start with Lamoille FiberNet. Lamoille FiberNet, Lamoille County. They are looking for these funds to do additional community outreach and legal analysis of a model that could involve multiple partners. They're currently partnered with a single provider, but that may not be the most cost-effective, most efficient way to serve addresses in various parts of their county. Of their CUD. So it's for that, for drafting the grant application, stakeholder engagement, legal analysis, and some support during the upcoming challenge process. And that was an application for $55,570. Any questions?
So we also received some material from Tony.
Yes.
Can we talk about that on the record, or is that confidential?
The entire application is the application is confidential until it is approved. If I don't see why we couldn't go into, I guess it.
Sure, we could go
Tony?
into executive. Yes, we could go into executive session to discuss those applications, Patty.
That would be mine. That would be my preference.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss both the Lamoille application and the Northwest application.
Yeah, and I would recommend including Rob, myself, Tony, and Alexi in that conversation.
Okay. And I assume we'll take representatives from each of the CUDs separately. So
Yes.
Lamoille first, and then we'll bring in Northwest's representative.
Okay. Is Lisa on the line from Lamoille?
I
Yes.
am.
You are, okay, wonderful. And I see MK there. So we're doing Lamoille first.
Yes.
Okay, well, I will move everybody over. You will see an invite saying that we have to, I guess we have the formal motion first, but yeah.
We did that
Oh, and the reasoning?
to discuss what is the language? Proprietary.
Yes.
Yes, I'm
Proprietary
sorry, it's
contract
one,
information.
yes, 1 VSA Section 313A1A, which protects information concerning premature information concerning contract negotiations, et cetera.
Okay.
All right, and did we vote on it? I'm not sure we did. All right, all
No,
those
I
in-
don't think so.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right.
Any
Lee-
opposed?
Aye.
The ayes carry.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa has a question before we go in. Lisa,
I was just going to ask if my board chair could join.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Jeff Tilton. I believe he's on. Thank you.
Okay. Opening the board. I'm opening the meetings now, and then I will add the other additional folks when we get in there. Give me a moment.
Excuse me, Rob, are you moving us directly in?
You should see a note at the top of your screen if you're not moved,
Okay.
saying to join the room if you're not moved automatically. So, trying to find Lisa.
I'm actually here as me today, Rob.
Great,
but
great.
Wait until you move over, Lisa. You may become valid.
Patty, did you get the little note to be able to move over?
No.
Okay, let me find out why not.
I didn't either. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
You should
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. You should get that now.
On my phone,
Patty.
not seeing it.
Not seeing it? Okay,
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either, Rob.
it should have just come across. Or oh no, it's still spinning.
Okay, mine just came in.
Okay, let me find where Laura is on here.
Do I just hop in on my own, Rob? I see the
Oh,
board in
Alexia,
the
I
staff
will.
room.
Yeah, you can do it on your own. I'm trying to find where. Laura, where are you on here? There you are. Okay. You should get it in one moment. Everybody has so many different email addresses. Okay, see you all in a bit.
Hey, Rob, if you can hear me, I got dumped out and I'm coming back in.
Hey, you're here still. Um, let me see if I can move you. I wish it would let
She
me
said she
move you
got
automatic.
dumped. She said she got dumped, Rob, and couldn't get back in.
Okay,
I got dumped out and I came back into the regular session.
strange. Okay, let me try this again. Yeah, it moved you back to unassigned. Weird. Okay, I'm doing it again right now,
Okay, no worries.
and I'll wait until you disappear from here. Okay, we are now going to invite the Northwest folks into the executive session. I will assign you. MK, is Brad also on here, or is it just you?
Yes, sir, he is. Brad is also on
Okay,
here.
so let me. Just gotta find you, Brad.
There he is.
Okay. Then we will return momentarily. You should see an invite in the upper part to join the room. I'll
We're watching for me.
wait until you all leave here, and then I'll
Join room, I
join you
got
as well.
one.
Got one.
Rob, just let us know when we should be ready to roll.
Has Laura made it back over here?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great.
Okay, perfect.
Ready to roll?
We are ready.
Okay. So no action was taken in executive session. We're going to take action out of executive session. I'm going to put a motion on the table that we approve Lamoille FiberNet's application, or let me rephrase that, Lamoille FiberNet's proposal for BEAD subrecipient support in the amount of $55,570. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, I've got Laura seconded that motion. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Is there any opposed? Just to check. Ayes carry 5-0. Congratulations, Lamoille FiberNet.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll likely have additional applications at the next board meeting to use up the remaining funds if they're needed. And a
Okay.
reminder, it's open to not just CUDs. If it's a small private provider that intends on participating in BEAD and needs support, please do reach out.
Okay, we're not done yet, though, Rob.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. I'm going to also make a motion that we approve Northwest Fiberworks grant application for BEAD subrecipient support program in the amount of $150,000. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dan. Dan seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
The ayes carry 5-0. Motion carries. Congratulations, Northwest Fiberworks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 6 on the agenda, CV Fiber request for grant extension, Tiger Team update.
Yeah, we'd like to do that in executive session, and from staff include Alexi, Tony, Rob, myself. And Alexi, maybe you can state who is going to be invited from CV Fiber.
Sure, it'll be Janelle from CV Fiber and Krista from NEK, barring anybody else. That's the last I knew.
And again, this is, as in the 1 VSA 313, if you have questions on. And
All right,
David Healy, I think
Excuse
David
me.
Healy wants to
Yeah.
join as well.
Hold on.
Yes. Please join David Healy as well. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to move that we go into executive session under Chapter 1 VSA, Section 313, subparagraphs A1A, which protects information concerning contracts where premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Is there a second?
Second.
There you go.
Okay, Holly seconded. Any
Yep,
discussion?
I think Krista should also be added to the list as well. If I got that right, Krista?
Yes,
Okay.
hopefully I said that.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all those in favor of moving to executive session, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, ayes carry. See you in executive session.
David and Janelle, you should see something appear in your upper right saying join room. If not, click on if you see a button that says rooms. Got it. David, in your upper right, you should see a invite to say join the room. Here, I will unassign you and reassign you just in case you missed it.
Yeah, I don't see it at all.
Okay, hold on one second.
Oh, there it is. Sorry, got it over
Oh,
there.
oh, now it's probably, oh, well, I'm gonna have to do it again because it's probably gonna kick you out.
You are really getting this down, Rob Fish.
Way to go, Rob. Let us know, Rob, when we're all moved over.
I believe we have everybody.
Okay, good job, Rob. You are perfecting the team's navigation. Okay, we have come out of executive session. No action was taken in executive session on item number 6. And we will now move on to legislative update.
Okay, we'll hand this over to Gwen. Gwen, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Gwen Sackhoff here to give you a mid-session legislative update. The legislature is essentially halfway through the legislative session. They are getting back from town meeting break tomorrow. And so things are moving and grooving. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on what is moving currently. Would it be helpful to share my screen, or you can work from your board packet, because I have the PowerPoint presentation embedded in the board packet as well.
Board packet works for me.
Great. All right. So the legislature has passed the Budget Adjustment Act, H 839. The bill was sent to the governor on the 7th for signature, so we can anticipate it being signed by the governor as early as today or tomorrow, but very soon. He has indicated that he has all intentions of signing the bill, and this is of import to the VCBB because that contains the $20 million that was borrowed back in July of 2023 and will be given back to the VCBB once signed by the governor. So that's great news. Second bill of import is S199. This is an act relating to mergers and governance of CUDs. This bill, it was passed by the Senate and is currently in the House Committee on Environment and Energy. And the bill outlines the processes and procedures for mergers of CUDs. It does things like permit annual meetings to be changed to a different date than is currently in statutes, and adjust the type of fiscal year that is used, as well as dates for budget approval. It adjusts and allows the treasurer of a CUD to delegate authority of duties that are, if authorized by the bylaws, or given the authority by the board. And it also amends the Public Records Act as it relates to CUDs to define confidential business information, to include the operation records of ISPs under contract with CUDs, as well as CUDs deployment plans if public disclosure puts the CUDs at a competitive disadvantage. And business records, as long that not governance and informational records, enjoy presumption of confidentiality under this bill. So again, this bill already passed through the Senate and is currently in the House Committee of Jurisdiction.
All right, Christine, do you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you. Question to the board, with advice from Gwen. This is an important bill for the CUDs, and recognizing it, it generally feels like it's pretty supportive, but I really don't want to take any chances. Would it be helpful for me to send something from the VCBB to these committees supporting the bill?
Yeah, I think
does Gwen, don't we want to ask Gwen whether she would like us to do that?
Yeah, I think it's directed to Gwen, but with.
Sure. So it's important for, I believe it's important for the board at large to at least give the staff guidance on all the bills, because it's pretty often that the committees do ask the VCBB staff to testify or at least weigh in on some of these issues. So by not at least having it in your back pocket, a response, it puts the VCBB at a disadvantage. And even if they don't volunteer to testify, a lot of the times it's by request of the legislature to testify.
But my question was a little bit different. I understood that the proposal was a letter in writing from the VCBB. And it seems to me that having a letter in writing that gets posited with each of the committees that take up the bill is probably a good thing. But that's really what I was asking for your opinion on.
Certainly the bills do change form and format. So the only disadvantage of writing a letter is that if the bill changes or if sections of the bill are removed or added, that letter becomes a little stale because the process moves so quickly and things do change often. It's not like I don't support writing a letter. It's just that there are disadvantages to it, just given how it is only a snapshot in time.
Okay.
Gwen, would a letter, I know that there might be a downside given the timeliness, but would it help right now to submit a letter of that nature?
Certainly, if there is support from the VCBB overall for the bill, that only helps the committee know that there is folks interested in the bill outside of the folks that testified in the Senate, which was mainly the CUDs. So it certainly helps the chances of any legislation moving forward, the more support they get, especially if it's not currently on the agenda of a committee.
Okay, thank you, Gwen. Laura has her hand up.
Yeah, just a question. If a letter or some action today by the board is more helpful, Gwen?
Action today would be great on anything that the VCBB feels is necessary. I think any of the bills that I'm going to walk through, I think deserve at least some response from the VCBB or at least an acknowledgement of a need to testify, because by the time the next board meeting arrives, we don't know where we're going to be in the legislative session, so time is of the essence. So I would encourage any of the bills I'm walking through for the VCBB to either submit a letter or give staff sort of an idea of how they want them to testify if invited.
Okay, great.
Should I continue or?
Yeah, I'm gonna put a motion on the table specifically for S-199. Gwen, I hear you, and we're going to go through the rest of these bills, but I do think that having some sort of written letter from the VCBB on this particular bill would be helpful. So I'm going to put a motion on the table that we instruct staff to do that.
Second.
Thank you, Holly. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes carry. Thank you. Floor is still yours, Gwen.
Great. The next bill is S-181. It's an act relating to the Community Media Public Benefit Fund. And this is currently in the Senate Finance Committee. It's been there for quite some time, and they're finalizing things with the bill, hopefully this week. So this bill is really, it's got a lot going on. It looks very different from its as introduced version, but currently as it sits, it would implement an assessment on satellite and video streaming services that is based off of what New York State has used as a modeled approach for assessing fees and taxations and creating a new revenue source from satellite and video streaming services. And providers would pay an assessment that's equal to 5% of their gross receipts. And with the revenue raised from this, the revenue raised, at least in Vermont, the proposal right now in Senate Finance is to create two things. The first is it creates a communications public benefit fund And revenue from the gross receipts would support the operations of PEG TV, which is also known as AMOs. In addition, it creates a broadband affordability program to qualifying low-income households, gives them discounts on broadband services and connected devices. And this is in response to the ACP program, the federal ACP program. The committee took this up not last week, but the week before. It was a new proposal. I will say the committee did not take any testimony on this last bit, particularly the broadband affordability program. It was a new proposal. There was no testimony taken on it. They perhaps are taking testimony this week on it. There was no real background given for where this necessarily came from. So I'm reading between the lines by telling you that it's a response to the ACP program, because that's essentially what the legislation says. But again, this bill looks really different from the as introduced version, and that broadband affordability program was added at the very end of the last week of session before they broke for town meeting.
I have a question. Gwen, nothing like putting a cherry on top by adding affordability to this other bill that has been moving slowly. But my question is whether or not the bill designates who would receive those funds or anything about the administration of an affordability program. I don't see that there is a way in the bill to specify a limit, how much goes to affordability, how much goes to affordability administration, and how much goes to PEG access TVs. Is that right?
You're absolutely correct. Again, there has been zero testimony, and there was only a walkthrough of the bill. So this particular section of the bill has gotten zero airtime in the committee. So it's really hard for me to answer that question because the bill itself does not specify. So these are details I'm assuming will be filled in, assuming this stays in the bill later.
And the committee itself came up with this amendment? Or
yes.
Mhm.
Again, there was talk in the committee. There's been talk in the committee since early on when they were having discussions last month when they began review of this bill that other states were going about, again, assessing fees or taxes to satellites and streaming services, video streaming services. So there was a sort of a let's see if Vermont can do something similar.
Right.
Yep, I'll make a comment here that, we share your concerns, Holly. We haven't really seen the bill or studied it, but we do know that the managing the ACP is a large challenge, technical challenge. And so I don't think the board should say anything about this bill at this point, but we're watching it closely, Holly, because it came up out of nowhere and it's very complicated. So we hear you and support what you're saying.
Thank you.
Gwen, can you give a reading of the tea leaves of the likelihood of this bill passing?
Well, the Senate Finance Committee has taken quite a bit of time on the bill, and they have put a lot of work into it. So my understanding is that they want to move it this week. And if anything in this bill were not to move, that does not mean the proposals therein would not be attached to a similar bill. So that's what happens with anything. So this, whether or not this bill moves or not, the idea of creating an affordability program or doing an assessment on these streaming services it's not something that they can't do later in a different bill. Just want to be really clear about that, because the next bill I'm going to walk through is another vehicle where something like this could also be attached to it. So that's just sort of how the legislature works. If one thing doesn't move, they'll attach it to something else. But yes,
yeah, I would assume there's some opposition to this.
There is less opposition so far on this, I shouldn't say only because, but there hasn't been a lot of airtime with this new proposal for the streaming services tax. So there was a lot of response to the initial introduced version of the bill, which had a very different structure to it and did not include the streaming services tax. But they only had about a day, or less than a day, but a few hours of testimony on this new current version of the bill. So it's unclear.
One alternate path, of course, is to, whoops, I'll put myself back on cameras. One alternate path, of course, is to recognize that the ACP seems to be committing suicide. And so if this is a source of funding that other states have promoted or utilized for doing a subsidy for broadband, a new source of funding like this might be the only way to get a subsidy for broadband for qualified households. And perhaps the VCBB, since it is mandated to look at affordability, should weigh in on not having PEG Access take a portion of those funds, but rather support this development of a new source of revenue that could be directed towards broadband equity.
Yeah, if we directed it towards, if we directed the funds towards the VCB before a policy to decide, what I worry about, I mean, I think that's, Holly, where I think you're going, which I like the sound of that, is, if the VCB board developed a policy within affordability, how to supplement these funds and use these funds to help. That's one thing. I worry that in the time frame of trying to get this bill put through, it could do more harm than good, right? Because there's a number of things I wouldn't want to say publicly now about the bill that we should be very concerned about.
Well, I guess I'll leave it at that. I hear you.
Yep.
Any other comments on S-181?
Okay. The final bill I wanted to walk through specifically is H657. This is a bill that has passed out of the House Ways and Means Committee and is currently in the House Environment and Energy Committee. Again, this is another bill similar to the last bill, the 181 bill, that looks quite different from its as introduced version. The Ways and Means Committee spent quite a bit of time on the bill, and it is one of the priority bills they want to move this session. So I would almost guarantee that it moves forward. The bill is also going to be up for initial testimony in the House Environment and Energy Committee this week. As it sits right now, as it relates, the things I'm bringing up are sort of related to the VCBB, but I'll end with where it really does. But it would repeal the 2.4% USC for landlines, prepaid wireless, and interconnected VoIP customers, and replace it with a 72-cent monthly charge per access line. This is the universal service charge. Not super related, but it does add a 988 suicide and crisis hotline to have access to these VUSF funds, which currently they do not receive any funds for. It repeals the telephone personal property tax and gross receipts tax, and it replaces or it places community property on the grand list as real property to be taxed at the local level. And it also establishes a fee structure for the communication service providers' equipment in the state's right of way. And those fees have to be assessed by October 1st, 2024. So those are sort of the big highlights. On the last slide in your board packet, I did a little cut and paste of what the specifically related to the Universal Service Fund, the sort of restructuring of it. and the proposal, what it would mean for revenues. So you'll see that the Vermont Community Broadband Board revenues would increase with this change to 72 cents from the fiscal outlook from the Joint Fiscal Office has it at 1.35 million, up from 820,000. And you can see the rest of the revenues for each individual recipient outlined as well. So that's the big highlight as it relates to the VCBB, is the restructuring of the Universal Service Fund and the potential increase for funding to the VCBB if this proposal sticks. And again, this is a bill that is a priority. We anticipate it moving, and it is up for testimony this week in Environment and Energy.
Thank you very much, Gwen. That's very helpful. Dan.
Gwen, are CUDs still exempt under this one?
As it relates, well, yes.
AOT and general
Yes.
plans or communication property.
So the legislature was really clear that that they wanted to make sure that the CUDs were exempt, and their legislative council has assured the legislature that the language in the bill protects the CUDs. That was their legal opinion.
Okay. That'll be difficult with the partnerships that some of the CUDs have created to provide services to the unserved. I don't know how that'll be addressed, but certainly we don't want to harm those incumbents that have partnered in good faith providing those services. That's all.
I believe I'd have to go back to the bill, but I think the intent was also to include those that are in partnership with. I don't know how they spliced that out, but I think that it was all under the same umbrella if it was a CUD or those in partnership with. But I can go back and verify that.
Yeah, I'll look it up too. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, Christine.
Yeah, there was a consumer protection bill that's at House Energy and Technology that I know it's been the whole discussion around how do you hold ISPs accountable in the long term. It seems like that would be something that would be at least good to start discussion on. So I'm wondering what the board's position on that is if we get support. I'm not necessarily asking for support on the bill because it hasn't even come off the wall yet, but the idea of at least getting that conversation going. What your thought is, Gwen?
So Christine, you bring up a really good point. So there are other bills, like I said a little bit earlier, is that the legislature will sort of splice and dice bills. So the bills I walk through are the ones that have had movement this year. That doesn't mean any of the other bills that are currently in committee are not going to get time, because what could happen is, again, they might take sections of those bills and put them in the bills that are moving. So the H419 bill is the one I believe that Christine is talking about, and it deals with consumer protection and competition. And so I think because the 181 and the 657 bill are both going to be in the House Environment and Energy Committee, that's also where the H419 bill is, that anything in that bill is ripe for discussion and ripe to be pulled off of the wall for discussion and put into any of the bills that are currently in that committee. So everything is fair game. I just want to be clear.
So Christine, were you asking for an action item from us?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, do you support? Yes, I'm asking the question, does the board support the idea of taking up consumer protection at the legislature? That's my question.
When you say taking up, what do you mean? Like providing testimony? What do you mean?
Well, we don't even have a bill yet, so
yeah. So why don't we just wait until a bill comes and we can be responsive to that? Or do you want to get ahead of the bill in some way? Do you have ideas you want to put into shaping the bill that you think are really important so it doesn't get off track? Or
I think
I'd certainly love to see performance.
I'd like to
Performance
pass
requirements.
first, Christine.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I cut somebody off.
I'd like to pass the policy first. Let's get that step done.
Okay,
We have a consumer protection policy that is ripe for. Let's get that done and we can leverage from there.
Good idea, Patty.
okay, thanks.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much, Gwen. You are an asset. We really appreciate you being on our team, and thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We are now on to item 8.
Rob, we'll take this item. Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, sure. Sorry, I just lost all volume for a second. So this item is about the creation of 2 new limited services positions. Since last fall, when it was made very apparent that we needed more administrative support for our general counsel, we've been moving forward with pursuing 2 different positions. One is the one is an admin services manager that will be for Tony, for the general counsel, and for board activities and a very limited program support. The other position is a data position. That's one weakness that we've identified, and it's been explained to us by our partners when it comes to doing our digital equity work. And to a lesser extent of BEAD. So the other position is a data manager. As I said, this process all started back in November. It takes a while in the state to have this happen. Joint Fiscal approved the positions. HR just approved the positions moments before the board meeting started. So we are now free to post them. But we wanted to inform the board that there's a budget adjustment. These are fully funded positions via BEAD that we think are essential to moving forward with our work and having the support we need as we enter this new realm of BEAD and digital equity and all the wonderful requirements that come with it.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're asking permission from the board to post and hire these positions. And we, like I say, we talked about that in the fall meeting. There seemed to be general support, but we don't have a formal resolution, and this was not in the budget for this year, but it will be funded out of the BEAD programmatic budget for the data person, and will be funded through USF for the legal support.
Okay.
Holly's got her hand up.
Sorry, go ahead, Holly.
So this is not in the budget, and I'm I'd like to speak in favor of supporting Tony, because I think it will help us get through a lot of our current activities more rapidly if we support Tony in doing clerical and administrative work. The data part I don't get, because we have a digital equity chief, if you will, and I don't know why her skills don't meet this requirement for data. I feel like our overhead on this activity is really expensive, but I don't have any comparison to what other states are spending relative to how much grant money they're giving out. So that's why I'm not trying to be a party pooper here, but I'm just feeling anxious, a little cautious about having a data person for DEI in addition to a person who runs the program for DEI. I thought our data was pretty good in our DEI plan, but maybe that was supported by people who are no longer part of our working group. Please comment.
Well, yeah, the problem we have is we're using federal data, which is inaccurate. For example, they show 50%, their data shows 50% of the households are are eligible for 200% of the poverty level or below. So we found massive errors because we're such a small, we're so small in terms of the state, relative to the federal data, a lot falls through. So we've got a lot of work to do on data. Now we've got a potential. I'll have Brittany and Alyssa respond to this in more detail and parse this out a little more. But we are looking at, based on the current formula that was used for the BEAD infrastructure bill, another $20 million coming around to the state, which, you know, about 12 of that will be a block grant and the other 10 will be a competitive grant. And that all has to be managed through data. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Alyssa and Brittany to take this further.
Okay. Hey, Brittany, go for it.
Okay, I can chime in here. So I will say I would say the digital navigator program in itself is a heavy lift. And to be able to also ensure that we are setting up systems appropriately and accurately with the data will require more than one full-time position. I will also say that the position that I'm in as digital equity officer and what my focuses are, I would say that the data set does exceed the scope of my work, because there's a certain skill requirement. I feel that that position in itself, when we're thinking about not only identifying what remaining data we need, also helping to establish a system where we're storing this data, how we're going to be sharing the data in real time, and also managing that on an ongoing basis. It would be, this position I feel is really needed for the digital equity work to ensure that we are having the capacity wise, it's really important, but then also ensuring that we're moving forward with the most accurate data while simultaneously establishing this digital navigator program and building partnerships. I think it's just going to be really, really crucial to this work.
All right, let's do Holly
Holly.
then Dan.
Well,
Holly,
okay,
Dan.
I was going to defer to Dan since I'm
Oh.
constantly asking questions.
I was just curious, did I miss it, or how much are we talking about here for that position, for the data position, monetarily?
Rob,
Rob,
you want to take that, or you?
With anything with the state, it'll depend on the candidate, but the starting position, and they could always hire into, or they could be a state employee at step 12 for all we know. I'm trying to find, I believe it's a step 26 or 27.
Just roughly.
Yeah. Brittany, do you have the position number and it
I don't
up
think
on
I
this
don't think
point?
looking
I'm
for
trying
exact
to.
number, Rob.
Okay.
So all I would
But
ask is,
Yeah,
it
it's
sounds
more-
like it's mostly GIS data, probably that you're dealing with,
Yeah.
and that
No.
you may be able to cover this with an extension of the existing contract with our GIS vendor. And whatever we do with this data, certainly shouldn't VCGI or some state agency incorporate it sustainably into their already existing environment, so that we're not building standalone systems. Because remember, at some day, this board will dissolve at some day. I mean, it really should all go into ADS somewhere.
Brittany, do you
You
want?
know,
I'm sorry.
I'd like to put it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
I am in support of this work. I just don't know if having a full-time employee or having a full-time contractor, which could be adjusted through a contract, would be most suitable for you. That's why I was asking how much it is.
I like Dan's introduction of a contractor role. It seems to me that part of this, as I hear Brittany discuss it, is about setting up the data sets and setting up the repository. I understand that the program design is one thing, but that the data population is something else. But it seems like we shouldn't have to have an admin data entry person for everything we do. If it were the case that this is required for reporting purposes to NTIA for BEAD, that might be different. But I'd like to see a job description, like asking in this way is really hard for board members, for me as a board member, to get my head around. It's very vague. I can't tell where the program design ends and the administrative function starts. I can't tell how it's sustainable, to Dan's point, and why it should be a full-time employee rather than a contract.
Christine, do you have any comment on a contractor approach?
Well, by definition, this is a limited service position, and a contractor approach. First of all, we are doing everything within a GIS format. This is really about a data scientist collecting the information. It will go into a GIS format. I think, Brittany, maybe you can explain more. We do have a job description, but Brittany, would you explain more about how this data scientist will work with the equity program, and what, in terms, Brittany's been having the discussion, of course, with the NTIA and what those requirements are for data. So, Brittany, could you explain that further?
Yeah, and also the intent too in this is yes, we're looking to set this up and establish this, and there's going to be some like really a heavy lift for like the upfront work. Then we also need to consider how we're tracking this over time and how we're allowing partners to be able to access this over time too, especially after VCBB sunsets. In terms of the social scientist aspect of this, we're needing to break it down by the covered population and to be able to do I guess like a multi-layer tracking of based on needs, right? So then there's like this added layer of needing to understand what the need is based on the covered population and their existing barriers, and then being able to track it with like the rest of the populations in Vermont. And I think that it's more involved, I guess, than how I'm able to explain it in this current moment. I am also open, and I will say too, like I'm in more support of having a person that can be on the VCBB staff, working closely with myself and Alyssa, the special projects director, as we're navigating or like establishing the digital navigator program, that this role can support that. And then also as we are looking at measuring over time how the program itself, the digital navigator program itself is working, as well as ensuring that we are tracking whatever anomalies that are going to arise in this process.
Also, I do have some more information on the starting salary. The starting salary is $32.33. I can also show on the screen the job description and specs if you would like. But this is the standard job specs for the state. Ours will be focused on our exactly what we're looking for.
What is that annually, Rob?
About 67,000. I just ran it on the calculator.
Okay.
And then plus benefits. Right
Yeah,
now, that
benefits
looks like
figure about 80% of
over
that.
It's over 100,000.
Yeah, it's over 100,000
for a
So
full-time position.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Brittany, and say, even as you explained that, I'm not clear on roles and responsibilities. And what I'm a little bit worried about is that that I don't really understand your role, to be honest. Like, where does it start and where does it stop? Because I thought you'd be building this digital navigator system, for example, and implementing it. And maybe I'm just misinformed about what your role is. So that's where I fall off. And I apologize if it's lack of information on my part.
Christine, could we tee this up for a next meeting and do a little background for us to say who's doing what? You know, I understand when you've got, Brittany may be in a very different position in terms of being able to handle the data. And just, if we could just tee up a little bit more detail.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. As a listen to this conversation, we can provide more information going into the meeting. But what I hear is there's a willingness to hire the legal support at this point, and you'd like more information for this data person and what that would look like, and how it relates to what Brittany's doing, and really kind of a breakdown of the digital equity requirements. I see it all kind of falling together.
I just want to inject, please. I'm in support of that. I get it. You just might get more value if you go to a contractor where you have a deeper bench and a broader group for roughly the same amount of money, and they would be dedicated to you. And if you could look into that, please.
Yep. We will do that.
And you don't have to manage them as employees.
Okay, so
Laura.
noted.
I note that Laura Sebeli's hands up.
Oh, I'm
Patty.
sorry.
Yeah, just briefly, I want to echo, in support of staff having the tools that they need, but really wanting to understand why we wouldn't do this as a contract position. So if, when coming back, really kind of, if your recommendation is not to go with a contract, really speaking to why with that.
Yep. So if we get one more hand raised, I guess, oh, that was Laura. So if we can get a resolution supporting the legal support role for Tony, I'd appreciate
Any
it.
questions on the legal support role? On the admin person, I'm going to make a motion that we approve moving forward and hiring the legal admin support position. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I've got Dan first as a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? And I'm just going to make a note that I understand the legal position is going to be funded through BEAD. Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
It's an admin service manager is the exact title.
Just to make sure that's on the record. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Ayes carry for the legal admin support being funded through BEAD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to the data management position. The next meeting. All right, next on our agenda is item 10, Bikuda update.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm going to characterize this update as kind of quiet before the storm. There's an awful lot going on, although not a lot of super high priority report outs to you all today. But clearly we're continuing to track the approval of Volume 1 and the start of the challenge process that Krista mentioned earlier on. I think it's really important to note Krista was successful in getting some additional definitions out of the FCC staff about how we could deal with some of these off-grid addresses, and that they were supportive of us putting in data a little behind their deadline, which was over the weekend, and allowing some data entry today so that we can hopefully have better data before Volume 2 kicks off later in the year. We are eager to hear more about the BCBP staff and board's plans for releasing the BEAD Volume 2 RFP and kind of how that will be developed, and whether or not there's any kind of public process, or whether that's just going to kind of come out of the gates as the official application process. We've asked staff to go through the NTIA's NOFO as well as the draft of Volume 2 that's been public to this point, and try and create a comprehensive list of all the requirements that we're going to need to comply with. But, kind of the final step in that is seeing the RFP that you all develop and understanding how we'll have to reply to that. So I don't know. I certainly understand, given the competitive nature of the BEAD process, you may not be able to publish that before it becomes public as a final document, but we'd kind of love to hear some update on what the process will be and kind of how that will be worked through and reviewed by the board before it goes out. We're also tracking, obviously, the state digital equity effort and the kind of the surprise that popped up in one of the bills last week related to ACP replacement, as well as obviously the federal program that we've started on through the initial digital equity capacity grant and the upcoming state grants, the block grant. And we have a number of CUDs that are actually starting to think ahead towards the competitive federal program and the opportunity for Vermont to apply there and kind of how that will work. So a lot of activities kind of in the preparation phase of all of these various programs. I think one of the comments as you all were discussing the policies earlier that came through in the Slack channel was just to reemphasize that the specific language on these policies really matters. And we are greatly appreciative of the extra effort that has been going on to kind of make sure that each word is right and that everyone has the same shared intent as we finalize the drafts, or at least understands the same meaning of the words, even if we don't have the same shared intent. Being really clear that the language in these documents says what we mean it to, or what you mean it to, is appreciated. So we're delighted with the process so far and look forward to the steps on these as they come back around for final approval. So on the legislative front, our lead bill is Senate 199 that Gwen talked about earlier, the mergers and technical corrections bill. And CUDs have been actively engaged with Senate Finance Committee, and they were very supportive and I think had a lot of very positive input for us about the draft bill that had been submitted earlier in the year. We came out of that with very strong support, with probably one exception, which is that the public meeting section of it, which we had proposed an exemption for CUDs, particularly some of the large CUDs like NEK Broadband. There is no central location to have a physical meeting. And we had proposed some language that we thought would make it easier for CUDs to continue to have virtual meetings as the default, while also allowing physical meetings for those who requested it on demand. And as part of that process, there is an omnibus kind of bill related to public meetings in Senate 55 that is an attempt post-pandemic to kind of come up with a standard way to do public meetings across all Vermont public activities. And our language related to virtual meetings was kind of stripped out of 199 in favor of being included in Senate 55. So we're continuing to track that and kind of would like to find out if there's a way to re-enable ongoing virtual meetings, much as you all meet virtually as this moves forward. Certainly we'll look for your help and support when we get to the place of understanding what the options are there for continuing to have virtual meetings. That is now Senate 199. Again, the mergers and technical corrections bill is now in Environment and Energy in the House. They have not called it yet, and we were kind of hoping that in the next week or two that'll get prioritized and become something that that committee will take action on. Similarly, on the topic of the affordability language that was inserted into Senate 181, the PEG access bill, the CUDs have had a number of conversations. We have a legislative policy meeting that meets twice a week, often, at least once a week, about that and kind of how to think about this complex environment of affordability as ACP hasn't officially gone away yet, but is likely to. And clearly needing something for Vermont for the future, trying to figure out whether, in fact, it's smart to rush towards a solution this session, or in fact, put together a study group and kind of work on the broader set of issues about I think Holly was mentioning not only about how you administer and do compliance on a program, but who's eligible and what services are eligible. Some would say that the current ACP funds things that aren't necessarily core or important for some of the core activities like participating in government or going to school or whatever that we might find as a or working from home that we might find is key in Vermont. So I think generally where the CUDs are is we're tracking what's happening with that new language. Like everyone else, we're waiting to kind of see what happens. We certainly recognized, like you did, that there's no real implementation or management language in there. It's just an idea at this point. We're kind of continuing to work through the two opposing views of, yeah, well, we should take the opportunity while we can get something in place versus, you know what, this is the kind of thing that'd be worth taking 6 months to study over the summer and try to deal with next legislative session. So not quite sure where that'll land, but we certainly are tracking that. The last one, on House 657, the bill that includes the AOT fees and previously included the poll attachment fees. The language, and we've heard exactly what Gwen reported, very strong support for an exemption for CUDs, particularly given the rurality of the locations we're trying to serve in reaching places that heretofore were not financially viable, that an additional tax wouldn't make sense. But we are watching that language very closely. It currently says publicly owned as the threshold for whether or not it's included. And so, any CUD that owns its infrastructure would be exempt from that. So it's not based on it, which would include fiber that, for instance, a CUD working with a commercial partner owns. So we're tracking that as well, just to make sure the language stays consistent with what we want. I think the last thing I had was several of the CUDs, as some of the conversations about, kind of the wind down of the ARPA funds continue, have asked whether or not, and I've talked to Rob Fish a little bit about this, we could get some kind of full accounting of where we are with the ARPA dollars. And that would include some kind of breakdown of kind of what the original allocations were, what the allocations actually are, or what's actually been, committed to various programs, and then finally what's left. Having some kind of consolidated view of that, I think, would be helpful for some of these requests for filling, unmet needs prior to the BEAD program, which obviously has much more strict spending requirements. So I think that's it for my list today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rob. Any questions for Rob?
I have one. I have a quick one, Rob. So quite a number of Vermonters are about to lose $30 a month towards their subsidies. Maybe it just can't be helped. But do you think that it's a hardship to ask for the study committee and go through that time? That's a prudent thing to do, but it does have an impact.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the we've gone through our discussions. Folks have said, yes, it is a hardship, and it will cause it will cause hardship, right? And that's balanced with but the program is very hard to implement and administer right now. If we lose the federal administration of eligibility and other such things, that's got to get recreated. And there are potentially, places that money is being spent that, hey, maybe you want to do $45 subsidy and spend it on less eligible services. And so just, the understanding that program was a rush job too. And that, I think everyone recognizes the hardship. And that's why some folks are saying, we really should do something quickly if we have the opportunity.
Okay.
That's a non-answer, Holly, because it's a really hard issue.
It's a hard problem. It's a hard problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up, you're on mute, Patty.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Rob. That brings us up to item 12 on our agenda, which is our closing public comment. Christine, you want to tee us up?
Yep. So at this point, we have a open public comment period. If anybody would like to make comments, please raise your hand and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I don't see any hands coming up. I think we're good to move to the next agenda item.
Okay, let's move on then. Thank you very much. We'll go to item 3, special meeting for March in parking lot. Christine?
Yeah. So the meeting, there's a couple things. First of all, we'd like to request to move the April 8th meeting because that's actually April 8th is the eclipse. So I don't think anybody really wants to be in the meeting during that once in a lifetime event. But we're looking at a number of agenda items that are going to come to a head in the next week or so. Those are the 3 accountability policies that we need to spend time on. We're going to have a Northwest application, grant application that'll be ready to go. And it sounds like it's iffy whether we have the CV proposal at that point. And we also have to talk about a DV fiber correction plan as well, which we're working on. So we've got a number of items that are going to take some time. So I think the immediate need is really to schedule a meeting to address all of those items, and that will take 4 hours. So we're looking at, I know we put out a doodle poll for the end of the month. I'm not sure where that is. I don't know if Lucy's still on the line. Rob or anybody else know when that date was?
Lucy is sick today and we don't have access to her doodle.
Okay, but anyway, that's what we're searching. We're searching for a meeting. We'd like to move the April meeting. It's, I'd say it's possible that we could, I'm not even sure what we have on the April agenda. If we get all these 5 items done, let's, I would say let's cancel the April meeting, and then we can schedule it based on how we do it this next meeting.
Could we move it? Could we move it to
next? Patty, can you tell me when the next? I'm a little confused. When's the next meeting right now?
Well, there was supposed to be a special meeting at the end of March, but we don't know if there's been a date assigned to that.
Yeah, I'll note that the eclipse is supposed to go from like 1:30 to 3:30 local time. So it is right in the middle of our meeting time.
Yeah. I think it's a good call to move that date because I don't think people are going to go. Could the board meet on April 1st, noon to 4?
Yes.
I have 2 thumbs up. Yes. Holly and Laura.
I'm still looking.
Yes.
Laura, have your hand up.
All right, I can do it as well.
I can do it also.
All right, let's move it to April 1st.
Okay.
And then Christine.
Except Patty, as I recall the dates that were proposed for the special meeting, that's going to be 2 meetings back to back.
Well, I'm not sure it does need to be 2 meetings back to back. I think what you should do now is schedule the April 1st meeting. We need to go back and look at where these other issues are. Certainly the affordability policies could be discussed on April 1st. I don't know the criticality of getting Northwest done between the 22nd and April 1st, what that looked like, but I guess I'm reaching out. I guess I'll reach out to Rob or the team to say, could we discuss, could we put the Northwest grant proposal on the April 1st meeting? If anybody has an answer for that. Is that too late?
I just want to jump in and really strongly oppose less meetings. I think we have some business from our last meeting that we need to take care of as a board, in addition to what we're looking at, in addition to BEAD. So that's my way in.
What are you saying, Laura? Don't cancel the meeting on the 8th?
Don't cancel the March meeting, the second March meeting.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep it straight. Thanks.
And actually, I've had one board member request that we go back to every other Monday. We go back to the schedule of every other Monday so that we can catch up and get some stuff done. How does that ring if we did something like that?
No.
I'm going to jump in just because I'm going to lose my ability to do so and say, I think it's really imperative at this point. It may be that we can get in front of a bunch of things and get a bunch of things settled down and go back to once a month, but it does seem important right now.
I think we all agree that these policy pieces have to get off the dime.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's get those off the dime with a special meeting and leave the once a month. It's 3 o'clock. We're done with our agenda. So we don't need more time. We need more effective time. So let's get the policies done. Happy to do a special meeting for that. And let's not move the once a month until we see we have a problem.
Okay, Brian, if
So
we do our special meeting on April 1st, we still need a regular board meeting for April.
No, we just said the April meeting, April 1st is the regular board meeting, and we're waiting to see the outcome of the special meeting date based on the doodle poll that we don't have access to.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So hopefully if we can slam one in before the end of March, we have April 1st, that's two meetings in pretty short succession. We should be, hopefully we're caught up. I guess my question is, on these policies, like, do we envision that being a long, sticky meeting? There's 3 policies. They're very clear. They've been vetted. They've had public comment. They've been posted. Like, unless I'm missing something, my hope is that, like, for my policy, that should be a 10-minute discussion. Are we envisioning like hours of discussion on the policies? Because then what's the vetting cycles?
We can't answer your question because some of us have never seen it. But I mean, I would think you would be right.
Well, I guess I'm trusting all of you on your policies that you've done all the right stuff and it's going to make sense. I'm hoping you're trusting me to do the same thing, because that's why we did the divide and conquer to begin with. If we're all going to now scrub over each other's policies, maybe we should have done it together to begin with and not have to now go through what will be yet another round of revisions.
If you want to know whether I trust you to do it well, yes, I do. I'm just saying, I'm not really thinking that this is going to help us to say, I mean, I think we should be able to get through those policies, 3 of them in an hour or less.
I'm with you, Holly.
I am hoping so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at 2 4-hour meetings to do something that should take an hour. Plus whatever the new grant application is. That's what I mean. I mean, like, our gut reaction is more time, yet we don't fill the time.
So if we can squeeze a meeting in before April 1st, 1 hour, check the box for some of that stuff. Do the April 1st meeting, that's April 1st, and see how that goes. There are a lot of items, particularly in the State House, that are moving quickly. I'm following them, but we need to be apprised of them, I think. We could be better about communicating electronically before. For example, let's take, I'm just going to throw this in here. I know it's disruptive, but I'm going to anyhow. We could take the minutes and take that off the agenda completely and do that electronically, make our comments and approve them offline. If we could just do that in a SharePoint site, for example, that's going to put 10 minutes back into our schedule. Things like that. If we share all the policies, we can comment on each other's electronically, and that'll probably bring the hour down to 40 minutes. But that's all I have to say. find a date in March to squeeze in to get that approved.
Yeah, it
Like
sounds
in,
like they're.
like
sounds
in a
like they're
Google Doc, right?
Yeah, and it sounds like they're working on a doodle date right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, except we didn't get many responses on that. So if you have an opportunity to talk about a date now, that'd be probably helpful.
Okay, so when we do the
My
special
headphones are
meeting,
gonna die.
yeah, when we do the special meetings, like it would be great. Like I was the jerk on the last one because I said, why are we doing this? I don't want like meeting requests without objectives rankle me. So if we can, and then once we have the special meeting and we know what the agenda is, if we can stick to that agenda, that would be ideal because our agendas are very fluid up until the meetings. And then we run into trouble with going over, right? So like if we can just get that discipline. So if the special meeting is about policy review, great. Let's box that to just that. I think an hour should be sufficient. You never know what the discussion is going to go. Maybe scheduled for an hour and a half. Let's get that scheduled before the end of March, and then we've got our March meeting or our April meeting on April 1st. 4
Yeah,
hours.
we need the Northwest grant before the April 1st. So we did the Northwest grant.
Why?
Rob, why don't you talk? Okay, the
Why
answer is going to be detailed because it ties into our deconfliction process for the bead challenge process. We need the addresses deconflicted. But Rob Fish, can you go into why that needs to happen before April 1st?
Sure, it's for that reason that Christine mentioned. It's helpful to have that information so the work on the addresses can begin. It saves us time and it moves things going forward.
Wait. Is it helpful or is it required?
Yeah. Explain why, Rob. Explain the why.
Well, every delay pushes the start of bead later. We're trying to get already with all the delays from the NTIA, we're looking at submitting our final proposal in November, December of next year. So that's why we're trying to build in as much as possible to be able to for sure the funding. The other reason is more the construction season this year. So Northwest can get going if their grant is approved, since we're already heading into the construction season.
So we were looking at March 22nd, I think was the last doodle floated, right?
Right.
So you're looking at the difference between March 22nd and April 1st, right? And no one still has answered my question whether it's desirable or whether it's required before the April 1st meeting, right? So I'm going to take that as it's not required. You're making that up. So somewhere between March 22nd and April 1st, we can do that application review, and there's no compelling reason that it can't be either on the 22nd or the 1st. I would vote for the 1st because I'd like to have the 22nd be nice and tightly bounded for the policy review that we are overdue on getting done anyway.
So I'm going to jump in here, Madam Chair, because I am going to lose the ability to communicate. I don't think I could disagree I agree that we need to be tight. I think part of the length of this conversation right now is indicative of the fact that we are not meeting enough. I also would like to remind board members that we have an item from our last meeting that we have not dealt with, which is not appropriate or fair
Laura,
to our organization.
Laura, that's on the agenda. We're going to deal with that issue next.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I hope you are able to stay on.
Okay, so in summary, I think what Brian, what we've heard, yes, I'm not going to weigh in on how many meetings we have. I'm answering specifically the question about the Northwest grant. It's desirable.
Thank you.
There's always the possibility it takes more than one meeting. And this is to try to avoid having to have a second meeting necessarily in April too.
Oh my God.
But just to be clear.
Yeah, that's the possibility on every topic we take on. So
all right, let's inflict some discipline right now. Can we do the special meeting on March 22nd just for the policies? Let's get that out of the way and done.
I'm out of town on the West Coast. I will be absent for that meeting.
Crap.
What was the date?
Remember, you don't need,
22nd.
you don't need me for the quorum. You don't need one of us for a quorum, Patty. You can go without me. If that's,
One of the items is one of the items is your policy. You have to be there.
okay.
Can I propose that we table this subject to getting the proposed date of the meeting? And Patty, you're going to know the detail of who needs to be there. I'm a little concerned now that we have, I think, 5 or 6 policies, and we've got a meeting to address policies, but we only have 3 of them on the table. So are we proposing, Brian, that we get all of them grouped together? And I've been told by council that that might be a mind bender.
I think just the 3 that are ready to hatch.
Okay.
Let's move those 3. And when the others are ready to come forward, we'll deal with the other policies.
They will be right behind. They'll be right behind these.
Okay.
Will they be ready by like the week of the 20th, Tony?
Of March?
Yes.
That would depend on whether or not we're getting 5 days of public comment, and whether or not we're going to do the same kind of thing we did with the other 3, which is another round of subgroup meetings.
Okay, so let's just focus on the 3. The 3,
Yeah.
bird in the hand, right? Bird in the hand.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes. And we're
Although
working out the process too, I think.
Although we might, there of those others that are left, like affordability, like we got 3 that should be slam dunks, and maybe affordability is a bigger conversation. We could add some meat.
Correct.
Right, but Christine, let's get Lucy on the job of nailing down the date. And if we have somebody that can't make it, have her run that person, directly contact that person. And it just requires hand-holding. We've got to get that date solidified because our calendars are filling up. So the longer we push it out, the harder it is to fill the date. And if somebody hasn't responded, then you've got to chase that person down.
Yeah, I'll personally chase them down. That'll be fine. And what we're talking about, let's talk about the length of the meeting, because it sounds like we could probably do this in a 2-hour meeting. Do I have that right?
Less than 2 hours. It's
90
just
minutes. 90 minutes.
Let's do 90 minutes, yeah.
90 minutes, okay. It might be easier to schedule if we pull it to 90 minutes. Okay, you got it.
all right. Like I said, we still have one agenda item left, and this is going to take some time, and it's to talk about the last meeting. We asked for this in executive session. It's a board review and personnel matter discussion. And it's mainly because I fell off the meeting. I think that was the power outage day. I can't remember what day.
Yep.
But I would like to come back to that discussion and formulate a plan. And I think really for this meeting, really it's just Tony. Everybody, it's Tony and board members. So Rob, is there a way for you to hand off?
I'm going to certainly try. I should be able to. I'll just remain in this side of things. I don't. Last time the meeting you didn't get kicked out of executive session when I closed the meeting. So let's hope that it doesn't happen again with the way Teams changes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, we're not going to return here, and there won't be any decisions made. So can we?
We'll adjourn immediately after the executive session.
Okay, someone will have to return to say that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you, everybody. I'm not sure how.
I'm going to open the meeting, and it should move you over, or you'll get that notice to join the meeting. I think I got anyone out of there. If you're not a board member, please do not join.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, Tony.
Tony's gonna have to move herself.
Is your policy. You have to be there.
Okay.
Can I propose that we table this subject to getting the proposed date of the meeting? And Patty, you're going to know the detail of who needs to be there. I'm a little concerned now that we have, I think, 5 or 6 policies, and we've got a meeting to address policies, but we only have 3 of them on the table. So are we proposing, Brian, that we get all of them grouped together? And I've been told by council that that might be a mind bender.
I think just the 3 that are ready to hatch.
Okay.
Let's move those 3. And when the others are ready to come forward, we'll deal with the other policies.
They will be right behind. They'll be right behind these.
Okay.
Will they be ready by like the week of the 20th, Tony?
Of March?
Yes.
That would depend on whether or not we're getting 5 days of public comment, and whether or not we're going to do the same kind of thing we did with the other 3, which is another round of subgroup meetings.
Okay, so let's just focus on the 3. The 3,
Yeah.
bird in the hand, right? Bird in the hand.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes. And we're
Although
working out the process too, I think.
Although we might, there of those others that are left, like affordability, like we got 3 that should be slam dunks, and maybe affordability is a bigger conversation. We could add some meat.
Correct.
Right, but Christine, let's get Lucy on the job of nailing down the date. And if we have somebody that can't make it, have her run that person, directly contact that person. And it just requires hand-holding. We've got to get that date solidified because our calendars are filling up. So the longer we push it out, the harder it is to fill the date. If somebody hasn't responded, then you've got to chase that person down.
Yeah, I'll personally chase them down. That'll be fine. And what we're talking about, let's talk about the length of the meeting, because it sounds like we could probably do this in a 2-hour meeting. Do I have that right?
Less than 2 hours. It's
90
just
minutes. 90
Let's
minutes.
do 90 minutes, yeah.
90 minutes, okay. It might be easier to schedule if we pull it to 90 minutes. Okay, you got it.
all right. Like I said, we still have one agenda item left, and this is going to take some time, and it's to talk about the last meeting. We asked for this in executive session. It's a board review and personnel matter discussion. And it's mainly because I fell off the meeting. I think that was the power outage day. I can't remember what day.
Yep.
But I would like to come back to that discussion and formulate a plan. And I think really for this meeting, really it's just Tony. Everybody, it's Tony and board members. So Rob, is there a way for you to hand off?
I'm gonna certainly try. I should be able to. I'll just remain in this side of things. I don't. Last time the meeting you didn't get kicked out of executive session when I closed the meeting. So let's hope that it doesn't happen again with the way Teams changes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, we're not going to return here, and there won't be any decisions made. So can we?
We'll adjourn immediately after the executive session.
Okay, someone will have to return to say that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you, everybody. I'm not sure
I'm
how,
gonna open the meeting and it should, it should move you over, or you'll get that notice to join the meeting. I think I got anyone out of there. If you're not a board member, please do not join.
thanks, Rob.
Okay, Tony.
Tony's gonna have to move herself.